I am honored to be with Mike Campo, Midwest Regional Manager of Firetrace International. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Noah. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no, this is great. Uh, I, we're always trying to find stuff people that can really help people in their businesses and in their shops, and preventing fires, big deal. So today we're gonna talk about just the factors that contribute to fires and discuss the best ways to prevent fires, and then we're gonna get into fire trace. So if things do ignite, um, we, it's a great way to prevent things from getting out of hand.
Sure, absolutely.
So first of all, I just want to get a little quick background on you. Give me like the story of your life in 3 minutes. You have been in fire protection for 43 years.
Right. Yeah. Probably won't take. I can do it in less than 3 minutes, probably. But yes, I started in the fire protection business in 1977 with uh, a fire protection engineered fire protection company. My experience was primarily in special application fire systems for data centers.
Just back up a second. You've been in fire prevention for 43 years, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And primarily, I started in the engineered fire systems business, protecting data centers, telecommunication centers. And I moved on to working directly with a fire systems manufacturer, which is Firetrace. And what we specialize in are smaller systems that are geared toward protecting critical small environments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were telling me earlier that Firetrace is a system that caters to small enclosures versus large enclosures like a room. You guys are sort of for isolating the problem before it gets out of hand,
Uh,
correct?
that's exactly right. Um, the individual that invented Firetrace, probably back in the late 70s, early 80s, describes it as we put out fires in a box. And that pretty much sums it up. We're not um, uh, really geared toward uh, protecting areas where there's occupancy, where people can be inside a particular room or enclosure, if you will. So our niche market are these smaller applications, of which we're finding that we've somewhat created what I call a micro environment. And with these smaller environments, we have over the years kind of developed different specific applications.
I see. So if you were had your technology on in machines in a shop, you'd probably still want them to have a sprinkler system just in case something else happened because you guys are isolating on the machine.
That's correct. And that's a good point that you bring up there with regard to sprinklers. Sprinklers are a very valuable fire suppression system, um, and it's geared more toward obviously structural type protection, and
Mm-hmm.
and it is almost all new type construction, especially any businesses or anything, are required to have sprinkler protection.
Okay.
Now, our systems are really not a requirement. They are something that an owner or whoever has this particular application where Firetrace is being used is putting it on for other reasons rather than being mandated by a fire code or law to put the system on their particular machine.
Do you find it interesting that a system like Firetrace isn't just required by OSHA or some body? I mean, it almost seems like it shouldn't even be an optional thing anymore.
Well, that's it's a point
Do you
that
guys have lobbyists in Washington just saying you need to require our machines on our mechanisms on the machines because the world depends on it?
well, it really depends a lot on the application of where it's used. Now, we do a lot of work in the wind energy business. That's becoming one of our top markets. Now, wind energy, believe it or not, there all these wind turbines that you see along the highway. Um, there's not actually a fire mandate that they have to be protected.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. Is this the same thing as the big windmills that we're seeing on the highway?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, wind turbine,
Those
windmill.
big wind turbines. Yep. And yeah, those are protected. Firetrace protects those, but in a different manner that you would normally or conventionally approach an application like that. A lot of people think, well, let's put sprinklers in them. But to put sprinklers in a wind turbine, it would be extremely costly and quite an engineering challenge to design something that would be able to pump water up a 300-foot tower. So yeah, there's different, codes and regulations with regard to these systems. With Firetrace, though, since it is a piece of equipment, it really comes into play a lot with the local fire marshals and wherever these systems are being used. They might go into a business and see that they have equipment. And here again, it's not usually mandatory unless the fire marshal or in some cases the insurance company or the insurer of the particular business would say, hey, in order for us to continue business with you or to, for us to protect you from an insurance standpoint, you better look at some fire protection options for you.
That's good for you guys. It would be nice to have somebody mandating that they had to have our product. All right. So we're going to get more into how this stuff works. But first let's take it back. I want to go over the factors to consider for a shop when they're coming up with their systems and the setup of the machines. So the first thing that they have to consider is running machines unattended. That's correct. that is like one of the biggest risks, correct?
Yes, it is. And that's more and more we seem to get most of our inquiries from companies that are looking to run a machine shop, looking to run unattended. With the technology that's available with machine tools nowadays, or CNC machines, if you will, the ability to program them and have them run continuously is can be a very big benefit. But the risk comes into play when you're running, first of all, an oil coolant and some type of high-speed machining operation, whether it's a lathe, a multi-spindle, a grinding operation, and running that unattended using oil, there is
It's a recipe.
yeah, it is a recipe exactly for a potential fire, and
Mm-hmm.
we come into play there by offering a very simple economical solution to suppress a fire
Right.
that would develop in an unattended CNC operation.
So if you don't want to buy a fire suppression system, don't run your machines unattended and run water soluble.
Well, that is a lot of people do that. One of the main reasons, or maybe I shouldn't say main reason. I'm sure machine shop owners would have some other ones besides, but uh, uh, as soon as you switch to running oil, yes, the big thing that comes into play is now you introduce the potential for a fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and is the catalyst for the fire, is it usually like tool breaks or the dust from mist collectors? What are the factors that are gonna ignite this nice combination of oil mist?
Yeah, and that's the big one. So if you picture a box with uh, an oil, a mist in it, an oil mist, it's almost, if you will, comparable to a cylinder in a vehicle, where you have, in particular, it would be something like diesel fuel, where you actually mist it into the cylinder, and then you ignite a, a spark plug, which creates an explosion. Now, that in certain forms is what happens when a CNC that is using an oil coolant, you get this oil mist in there, and they even have specific systems that evacuate that mist uh, as the machining process is going on. Well, a broken tool or any type of um, activity that would cause a spark
Okay.
in that mist is just like that spark plug in an engine cylinder, and away it goes. And those are usually not very slow burning fires. They're pretty violent, and they occur very rapidly.
Are there
And
certain materials that cause things more?
uh, in
Certain
Mr. No, I'm sorry, go.
Are there
Well,
certain materials that cause bad fires more than others? More risks to go over?
well, sure. It would be, as far as it could be the material, sure, being machined. Um, Most of the applications uh, where we come into play for protection are uh, the titaniums, the stainless, just regular steel, um, those kind of even aluminums, where you are machining that, and uh, the friction caused, that could uh, that could ignite the oil mist. It might not only be a broken tool, but it could be uh, a failure of the pump, the oil pump, uh, and the coolant being interrupted. If
Okay.
that occurs, the mist that's still there is a potential for combustion, and we come into play in that respect.
Okay. Is um For every single kind of machine, what if you're on like a six spindle CNC index or you're on a Swiss machine?
Mhm.
Are is the is it basically like one fits all, or are there like is there a bigger fire suppression system for a bigger machine?
Well, that's one of the things about that our systems, they're not engineered, which is a term used in fire protection every once in a while. Engineered systems would be those that uh, apply to protecting rooms or real specific applications, where we can standardize with CNC machines because looking at the machining volume is the focus area that we want to protect. And then we have particular fire protection cylinders with a chemical in them that's preset, and we basically plug that particular tank assembly into the volume that it protects. So if we look at the volume, the length, width, and height of the machining space,
Mm-hmm.
and then say, okay, this particular tank assembly fits into that protection of that particular volume. There's things like concentration of fire protection agent that are taken into consideration when we design those pre-engineered tank assemblies. So we know that this tank will protect up to a specific volume.
Okay, so they do make, for something larger, you have a bigger tank.
That's correct. Yep.
All right. So let's go to the nitty-gritty, the roots of this whole thing. How does it work? What is the the quick explanation? Because I think it is a pretty simple way in the end of how the mechanism functions. Give it start to finish. Fire comes. What's going on?
Yeah, one of the how the system works is also very unique, and the invention came about from a gentleman in Great Britain that developed a thermoplastic tubing that had the capability of holding pressure for an extremely long period of time. So you think, what could you do with a piece of tubing, 6 millimeter diameter tubing, that would apply to fire protection? So what he was able to do was take this.
Did he have this application in mind when he was inventing this?
Yeah, he did. And
okay.
where its first application for Firetrace was on farming equipment, in particular a combine. He was given a charge, so to speak, or an opportunity by the British government. They were having an excessive number of fires on combines, and how can they protect these? And it was also related to the insurance companies that were paying large sums of money on these burned up pieces of farm equipment. And he came up with a very simple solution to put this fire protection, small fire protection system that didn't require any electrical energy, and applying this tubing as a heat sensor inside the engine compartment.
Okay.
The unique capabilities of that tubing are that when it's pressurized, it becomes a linear pneumatic heat sensor. So anywhere along the length of the tube, when it comes in contact with a flame or an extremely high temperature, the pressure in the tube expands, the material softens, and the tube ruptures. When it ruptures, it releases pressure that is holding a piston down in the fire protection tank. It releases, and then the fire chemical is dispensed into the protected volume. So
Okay.
no electrical energy. It's all a pressure operated sequence.
Right. So once it can no longer hold it, fire it 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 does its thing.
Yeah, and one of the when we were speaking with the gentleman that invented it, he made the comment that uh, we operate best when we fail. So it actually is when the system fails, it
That's when it's
operates.
working.
So when it loses pressure, it fails. The system actually operates. So there's uh, uh, it, in that particular mode, we really do not have what we call false actuations. There's no, you always hear this, well, that the system went off, it was a false alarm, it was a false
Ah,
discharge. Really, technically, you don't have that with this particular type of system.
very interesting. So it only goes off if it's supposed to.
Yeah, it only goes off when it's supposed to. That's
That,
correct.
that's what it's supposed to do.
That's what it's supposed to do.
um and there are a few things that, a few caveats, correct? Magnesium can't, what happens if you were manufacturing machining magnesium?
Yeah, that's a good a good point to bring up. Magnesium, or what we primarily address in machining fires is oil. It is it's a the flammable liquid.
So if people are
So
using like a CNC lathe with water-based coolant, they really probably don't need fire tracing.
there's not a fire hazard there. Um, the metal fires, which you were alluding to earlier when you were talking about magnesium, those are a different class of fire. You fires are classified in different categories,
Mm-hmm.
and by the national fire codes and the National Fire Protection Association, they have a classification for different types of fires. The most common classifications that we hear are A, B, and C. A are class A fires, if you ever hear, are wood, paper, fibrous materials like that. Class B fires are flammable liquids. Class C fires are electrical fires.
Right. You hear
Class,
that about certain machines, quite a few
yeah,
machines. Yeah.
yeah. And class D are metal fires. Now, metal fires are a different a different hazard. They
Okay.
are very, very difficult to suppress, and for the most part, most fire protection systems do more simply contain them rather
Well,
than suppress
what
them.
is okay, so the tube ruptures, then what's going on? What does it release onto the fire?
We release a variety of different chemicals uh, based on there are certain things that can determine what chemical we would recommend on a CNC fire. They're primarily going to be those class B oil type fires,
Mm-hmm.
and we would use in many cases very clean fire suppressants. We want no cleanup afterwards. There's no powder. There's no residue from that chemical. And this is very critical in those particular applications. The reason we don't get into the metal fires is because the only thing that we have available are powders, and to suppress those or to contain them, you have to use a sand like powder, which is not really good thing to discharge into a CNC machine.
Right. Right. It's sort of a last resort thing. So what do you tell people if uh, they come to you and they want a system and then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're doing magnesium or something like that?
Yeah.
Uh,
Unfortunately,
do you recommend a different product, or do you just say, hey, have a bag of sand next to the machine?
well, a lot of companies do. They have these. If you ever see a CNC machine and there's a yellow fire extinguisher next to it, that is a metal fire
Mm-hmm.
extinguisher. And we see that quite often. There are some other chemicals. There are gases such as argon that can be used to suppress. It's very clean. It's a gas. The systems are a little more complex and they're expensive. They're high pressure. And that is an alternative. We, with our small systems, do not, at this particular point,
Okay.
you offer anything like that.
Well, what about the electrical fires? Like we've sold at Graf Pinkert, we've sold some uh, MS indexes, and that's one of the, you sell it to somebody and then they want to complain and they go, oh, I can tell there's been a fire in this machine in the electrical cabinet. And we always say, well, this is normal. This is a typical thing to happen. Do you guys also handle the electrical fires, or is it mainly just the oil fires?
No, we can definitely handle the electrical components. Uh, Interestingly, we have a system a little bit, well, it is unlike the systems that we provide for CNC machines and some other applications where we specifically go after electrical panels, electrical compartments, things
So
like
people
that.
might have two different products on their machines then?
Yeah,
Okay.
very, quite possibly, yes. We've done that in some cases where, just like you said, even with an index machine, there might be an electrical section where
Am I right? Is this something that you encounter, or am I getting something mixed up?
I have encountered it, not that often, but we primarily focus on the machining volume. But we have had some applications where uh, a particular customer has said, "I'd like to, I'd like to have something to protect my electrical component section here,"
Mm-hmm.
and we have something which is a smaller and even a very simple system using Firetrace, using that tubing. And it's very effective and very clean and can suppress fires in electrical applications very quickly.
Interesting. How often are you selling machines aftermarket, or after people have bought a machine, and versus just bundling it in with the machines?
Um, there are a few uh, customers that we have that manufacture uh, CNC machines that have Firetrace as an option. The majority of
Oh,
the,
you're talking about like a machine tool builder, like
yes,
Star or something, or
yes,
Haas.
or
Okay.
Haas, yeah, that would use um, as an option if someone comes to them and says, "Hey, I want to buy a particular machine," uh, they would.
Who are the ones that do it? You don't have to tell me. I'm just curious.
I'll give you one example of a company, TrueTech, makes a nice, very nice CNC grinder, and their option for any of their clients that want a fire protection system, one of their options is Firetrace.
Okay.
So as the unit is manufactured, a Firetrace system is installed.
But
But most
normally,
of them
I mean, you're a
are aftermarket.
salesperson, so how are you normally selling them? Are you,
They are primarily the majority of them are usually aftermarket.
so the
So
distributor doesn't doesn't sell the machine with it right on it generally.
Some of them do, and they'll package it. Some of the CNC dealers will say,
Okay, the dealers
if
themselves.
yeah,
Okay.
if they get approached and say, uh, hey, I want to buy a particular machine, and I'm worried about, I want to run unattended using oil with this machine. Do you have a fire protection option? We are available. In some cases, we work directly with the CNC dealers, or we connect, excuse me, we connect the CNC dealer with one of our fire protection distributors that will install the system as a separate contract.
But it sounds like your business, though, is a lot of people, just end users coming straight to Firetrace. It's not like a computer you buy that has antivirus software installed on it or whatever. It's like,
no, it is. You're right. It is a lot of through our website. We get a ton of inquiries, and also over the years, and with our participation and exposure at various machine tool trade shows, and through the the website, and just over the years, I think the reputation that we have developed, and the brand that we have developed in the CNC industry has been great to us. I mean, that
is what's a bigger business, the turbine business or the CNC business?
At this particular point, the turbine business is doing very well for us. One of the reasons is we provide a very unique application there, and the systems are a little more complex than a CNC system. The opportunity
is it the same putting out oil fires and electrical fires? It's the same stuff?
It is. It's primarily focused on electrical fire applications in the turbines.
Okay.
There are some oil applications around the generator and areas like that in the turbines, but the primary focus there is electrical cabinets, PLC cabinets, and things like that in what they call the turbine nacelle.
Is business hot right now, though, for the CNC machines? Because this is really important for everybody to know, as far as how the economy is doing. And
well, sure. And just like anything else, there was a slowdown when the pandemic started in March for us, but it has been coming back. We're very
everybody wants Swiss machines right now.
Yeah, and it's been we've been very busy lately, and we think that this trend will continue. It's the manufacturing, especially the the industries that we think will even improve, is when aerospace. We do obviously the CNC machining in aerospace. We want to see that come back. It's a little bit subdued right now, obviously, due to people not traveling as much.
Right.
But some of the other ones, the medical industry and the automotive industries are coming along very nicely.
Good. So how much does one of these things cost? What's the range?
I look at Firetrace to range anywhere from 2 to 4% of what the maybe up to 5% of what the machine costs.
All right, but what if you buy a used Star from 2008 or whatever? That doesn't answer my question.
I would say that an average CNC machine cost would be in the $6,000 to $7,000 range on a machine.
Okay.
And that's ready to go and out the door.
Installed. It's probably, is it quick to install? Take a couple hours?
It usually takes, I would say in most applications where I've seen these installed by by a certified trained Firetrace technician, um, uh, 2 to 4 hours.
Is there really any learning curve, or is it just like, there you go, and hopefully you won't have to use this?
No, there is a little bit of a learning curve, and just like anything else, the systems are engineered to be rather simple, and I think people are, especially some of the technicians, the fire technicians, and uh, uh, OEM accounts that we have that install the systems are amazed on the simplicity
Hmm.
of the design, and that's one of the features of it. It is rather it's a lot easier to install. First of all, you don't have any electrical components, so it's not an electrical system. There are no control panels, batteries, things like that. So it runs 24/7 without having to, make sure that there's electrical energy or backup electrical power.
Are there alternative forms of fire suppression systems? I mean, because I see different ones. I mean, we see different ones coming from other countries.
Sure.
Um, do they work similarly generally?
For the most part, Firetrace is pretty unique. There are some what I call knockoff systems.
Mm-hmm.
Firetrace invented the particular technology of that tubing I mentioned. There are other, sure, there are other fire
Okay.
systems, but one of the things that we focus on, as I mentioned earlier, is that micro environment. So there are a lot of companies that make engineered systems that are excellent, but it's almost an overkill. Whereas we provide, with that niche market, going after that specific smaller enclosure, uh, we're focusing on those, and
Uh-huh.
therefore the pricing structure and everything that we have with our systems fits a little bit better into taking a large engineered system and scaling it down to
Okay.
protect the smaller enclosure.
Okay. Because like, sometimes we'll sell a machine from Japan and it comes with a fire suppression system. So I'm just, is is a fire suppression system a fire suppression system? I'm sure. I mean, you're a salesperson, so
Yeah.
you're
No.
clearly going to have some kind of argument why they're different. But
Yes. Yeah. One of the things too is if a system comes in from, for instance, comes into the United States from Europe or Asia or wherever, we have certain regulations and codes, uh, whether they're Department of Transportation or certain other fire protection agencies and codes and things, where our systems fit into all of those categories for use in the United States.
ah,
So a system coming in from Germany, and there are some really good systems, but their their pressure vessels and their tank assemblies may not be in compliance with United States regulations from the Department of Transportation or whatever, and that obviously presents opportunities for us. Uh,
so
you know,
some inspector may come in from, say, OSHA or wherever, and see that system and go, that that's not legit here. This isn't
yeah,
a, yeah,
yeah. In most cases, it's not so much OSHA, but as it would be from either
insurance.
a local fire marshal or even an insurance carrier. Some of the ones that are really focusing on
Okay.
the fire protection aspect and that are familiar with it would recognize that, hey, that's not in compliance with what should be on that machine, and therefore could be a reason to look at another alternative.
Really interesting. A couple other little questions. What is something really interesting that you learned in the last week?
Something interesting that I have learned in the last week.
It doesn't have to do with fire suppression or machining or world peace or anything. It can just anything.
Let's see, what's been interesting.
Don't think too hard. You
Uh,
saw a movie yesterday and it told you something, or you read this book or whatever.
um, no, well, as far as something that I've learned interesting this week. Well, you kind of caught me off guard here. I should
Or it
be
could
able
be
to
last 2
respond.
weeks. Last 2 weeks. That's fine.
Let's see. Well, I think uh, just well, from a personal standpoint, I guess practicing a little bit of patience. I've been with the pandemic, being at home a lot, I have my grandkids close by and everything else, and a lot of times if you're either working at home, or I'm fortunate enough now to be in my office, but yeah, they can present some challenges, and I think the older I get, I think I've learned to be a little more uh, uh, patient and understanding, and with a lot of things that are going on, whether it's some of the things you hear on the news, uh, with and even personally with dealing with young children and things like that. It's like I've been there, done that, and now it's a come around again with grandchildren, but they're a
Okay.
joy, and that type of thing. So for whatever that's worth, it's I
Yeah,
guess that's
sure.
something that I learned.
What are the go back to a negative thing. What are the fires that Firetrace must put out? What are the problems you guys have? Customers come to you and they say, what the hell? What, why didn't it work or whatever? What, how often are you, quote unquote, putting out fires?
Yeah, it's a and you're right. Where I think a lot of my company, it's just like anybody. I mean,
But
I've been a long time in.
a good company is good at damage control, you
It,
know?
that's exactly right. And I always when I look at Firetrace, one of the main we operate on pressure. We have to have pressure to operate, whereas other systems need electrical energy to operate. We need to have pressure.
Okay.
So, what would be the bad thing that we need to uh, watch out for and continue to improve is containment of pressure. So, leaks. If systems have pressure leaks due to uh, there's various situations that can cause pressure leaks, whether it's a faulty component of, of ours, or installation problems, or the environment that we're protecting may be the cause for some of the leaks. So that's one of the things that's always on our mind, that we're always trying to improve.
Okay. So even though it seems like the way you present it, it's a very simple technology, you're constantly doing R&D and
Exactly. Our if we get these situations, it's critical, and just like you say, the way you respond to those things is, I think, which really differentiates our company too, is if there is a problem, we want to make sure we take care of it right away. You've got your company's reputation, and also you're dealing with a life safety system, so it's important
sure.
that those that anything like that comes up is that you stay on top of it, and uh, your research and development is to also in our engineers are the tops, and they when they see these situations, they go after them and make sure that they don't occur again.
All right. Well, I, I, I'd say that's as good of an answer as I could expect from
Great.
anybody. I mean,
Better than what I learned, right? Than the grandchild story.
no, the grandchild story is good. That's a slower, repetitive learning process.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But I mean, fortunately, you haven't done like a Volkswagen blunder, or like haven't put out like a new Coke of fire suppression systems, or you haven't had to like go back and do damage control on that.
Oh, yeah. Those sometimes you kind of wonder on, but, but if you look on those with those companies though that had those like the new Coke and things like that, uh, pretty amazing how the recovery
Well,
has.
the new Coke, yeah, that was a great case. They really turned it. They made a good thing out of a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
All of a sudden, everybody realized how much they loved the original.
And who knows if that wasn't planned.
Oh no, I don't think those guys are that smart. I don't. Well, Mike, thank you so much. It was really good to reconnect with you. Uh, Sorry that I it after we talked a while, I was like, yes, I do remember now from a PMPA event, and yeah, it was great to reconnect. And thanks so much for doing the interview.
Yeah, well, my pleasure, and thank you for the invite and for reaching out to reconnect. Like I said, I also have always enjoyed, when you get so many different emails and things like that, and your little uh, uh, blogs and so
Do you
forth.
listen? Have you listened to any of the podcasts?
Uh, Not so much the podcast, but some of the, I guess earlier on, some of the newsletters and so forth
Do
that
you
you
still
put
get
out.
them? Do you still get the
Uh,
newsletters?
yeah, I believe I do. I get a ton of them, but specifically I remember yours just
All right. Well,
because
I'll make sure you're on there. But
okay.
it it's not it's not abnormal for me to interview people for podcasts and they go, "Yeah, I've never actually listened to one before."
Well, even with podcasts, I was trying to find out exactly what the term meant. In some
I
ways,
agree. At first, I didn't exactly understand what it was.
yeah. And I consider myself pretty tech savvy for an older person, but just trying to if I really have any tech questions or don't understand certain terminology, I just go to my 9-year-old grandson, and he takes care of it. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
I think this is probably going to come out maybe a week from tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm going to need a good photograph of you. I mean, otherwise I'll just take like a screenshot from the interview, but something contextual with you in a shop with Firetrace system, or you know, in front of a big blaze, like,
Or running out of a fire or something like that.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
have you gotten to like, I'm sure you have, like, I'd like to see a demonstration. Is if you saw a demonstration of the product, would you go, ooh, ah, wow, I can see that fire coming and it just got rid of it right away? Or is it just more like, it's working when it's gone? It's like terrorism. Like they're doing a good job of stopping terrorism when you don't hear about a terrorist attack.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's we have some amazing surveillance videos of a machine shop, for instance. Everything looks normal, and then all of a sudden you see one of the machines explode,
Whoa.
and the fire trace puts it out.
But isn't it a little late if the machine explodes?
Well, when I say explode, I mean you see fire shooting out the top of it, and which is the oil mist. It's a very, very fast burning fire, which is a
Isn't it
mini.
too late if you're seeing fire shoot out the top of it?
Uh, we work on heat, so smoke. Even if smoke occurs, we're not detecting smoke. We are detecting high heat and flame. So as soon as that comes up, we respond within seconds, 2-3 seconds after that happens, and the fire is out in 2 to 3 seconds.
And the machine generally isn't damaged. The machine can generally just get going again.
The machines can get going again. Yep, and that the suppressant that's discharged into there is very clean, and you can see that in these videos where, boom, it goes off, but guys are looking up and it's over. The event is over in just a few seconds. Uh, and we are minimizing any damage. If you could see a machine fire, if that occurs and isn't mitigated in a very short period of time, it could be catastrophic. The smoke that develops and everything else, could be a very bad situation. And our systems detect and suppress that fire in that in that very few seconds, to minimize any damage. What might be a little burned, uh, connector or something inside the machine, if that. But we usually minimize damage to hardly anything.
Wow.
So
Awesome, Mike. Thank you.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sure we both have to go to our respective next Zoom meeting. So take it easy, Mike, and
Okay.
I'll bug you about the photo, and we'll keep in touch. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again,
Thanks.
Noah.
Bye.
All right. See ya.